maybe we're gonna listen to this in like a year or so and be like, yo, the ethical balance on that was wild, but doesn't
I
feel
don't.
like it.
I put in a bunch of money to, Jeff Bezos' yacht with my AWS fees. So I don't
Right?
know.
Well,
So like
well, let's do that.
but
Let's talk
God damn
about
it, he
that
makes a
though.
good product. I'll give
He
it to him
makes
on
a
that.
good old. You want to keep it up? Hey, how's it going? We're back on the Kickblocks podcast with Knyck and Dro. We've got a special guest this week coming to us, a really strong developer we know from the Web3 space. Massey's on with us, so thanks so much for hopping on the call with us today. How you feeling, man? How's your week?
Doing good. It's been fun. Have been having some cool conversations with some pretty cool people. Grinding, trying to make stuff happen. As always. So glad to have me on, and looking forward to chatting some more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
man,
for
it's great
sure,
to
for
have
sure.
you on, man. I know, Mass, you and I, we just met. We had like a quick little, maybe 3 minute
Hmm.
conversation before we hopped on. So, a lot of the conversation we're here today, we'll get to know you, myself, and the audience. I know you and Knyck know each other a little bit already. So this will be fun. Why don't we
Yeah.
get started with the current events? The way we like to do it, I feel like for the last few podcasts, is we each kind of have something we'd like to talk about.
Mm.
Hmm.
For the current events that I thought that I really want to talk about were some of the mobile wallets that are coming into play right now. One of the big ones being the Solana mobile wallets that came into play. I know it's a big um, NFT niche, I would guess I would call it. The reason that I like to bring it up for this week as a current event is we talked about the friction with onboarding users to Web3 and
Mm.
everything, and I think this will go a step towards kind of lightening that load in the right direction. There was hype behind it. If you were in any of the Twitter spaces, you saw people really pumping up the fact that this wallet for Solana was coming out on mobile, on iOS first, and then Android. So all the Android hype boys were a little pissed for like like a good 2 weeks because they Apple got it first, but they got it eventually. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. What about you, Knyck?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was big for me too. I've been waiting for Solana to drop there, like or like Phantom to drop on mobile for like the longest time. And then it feels like I don't know. I've been super busy these past couple of weeks, and so that time when I was like looking to be like on my phone, like
Yeah.
clicking through Solana, it hasn't been like as much of an impact. But you know what I found actually, current events wise, there's a crypto club. Apparently, I'm traveling mess, so like I'm like in Tulum right now, and there's
Mhm.
apparently a
Oh,
crypto
nice.
club somewhere around here. And I'm like, I need to hit the club while I'm here. If I'm hitting every other club, I need to hit the crypto club while I'm down here. And
Interesting. Oh,
it's
that's
cool
sick.
to see like the way that people are making these sort of like pop up spots throughout the world. And so it's really like shows that like people aren't really required to be like in the same place if they're working on projects or they're putting together like these sort of meetings. Ness, how about you? Do you work with the people that you work with on your project? Or first of all, give us a little bit of background on your project, and also the people do you work with? Like, are you remote? Have you met them before? What's that like?
All right, yeah. So a bunch of cool things. So one, the project. So I've been around in the space for a bit. I guess sort of taking a step back. My current project isn't explicitly in crypto. There's so I think when we initially met and spoke a couple months ago, I was floating around working on something for gating Grand Theft Auto 5 servers with NFTs that you could wear inside the game. And so
That's lit.
you'd gate them. You'd go to website, connect your wallet, get taken to a server. Pop up. You'd have to have the stuff installed, but once you have the stuff installed, you could go and then you would appear on your shirt, a car, etc., and actually start to bring traditional utility
Yeah.
with the new technology. And that's always how I sort of always look at sort of new tech stuff. I mean, there's, when it comes to new business, there's always this hybrid of art and science, right? There's some things like there's new science that enables new things that couldn't have done before. But
Mhm.
then there's also the art, there's the storytelling, there's the aesthetics. How do you,
Yeah.
the branding, the marketing, how do you capture the hearts and minds of people and
Mhm.
actually, get them to use and, on board with this new technology? And so, um, it was super cool. I actually ended up, unfortunately, having to pass on it for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
There were certain things that were like super cool about it, and a lot of times it sort of comes down actually to the question is like the team
Yeah.
and the guy who's doing and who had sort of that background on the GTA side. You know, he was looking more for like a lifestyle business, and I'm way more sort of like tech startup. Let's build something and scale,
Yeah.
and just like make something really freaking cool. And
Mhm.
so I was like, you know, I think that's something I've learned is just being a founder is like it's so much about at bats. The more at bats you have, and the more you like, all right, let me go test this hypothesis and just look at, you know, it's like dating, right? Like
Mhm.
when you're younger, you see red flags, but you ignore them, right? But you know, as you get older, you're like, all right, that's a flag, and I just like I
Yeah.
gotta check my gut and then just move on.
Yeah.
And so I, you know, when it comes to it's like a big part of my philosophy is that like in anything's gonna humble you, like Wordle, right? Wordle it's some idea some dude just made up and like in November and then just sold it for millions of dollars like in like
Yeah.
2 months, right? So like if anything, that reminds you of like, yo, just make something, push it out, and you know, give it a little chance to see if it sticks or not. And if it doesn't,
Yeah.
there's another great idea right around the corner.
Just keep
Just like
moving.
keep hustling at it, keep going at it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
So, Mass, it sounds
I,
like you've been in this space, this creative space, this entrepreneurial space, or whatever. Like, where does that come from? Let's take a step back before we even dive deeper into your
that's
project.
a good
Where does
question.
that need
We're
to
getting my
want to
psyche on this.
create, want to, and yeah, we want to get to know you. Like, I don't know you. I know, for example, Nick and I, we're a little creative, you know, and so that's for me. This
Same.
podcast, this project tickles that creative urge in me to do. You know, for you, where does that come from?
Oh, so that's a great question. So I first got into like making shit in high school. And I was like always like a math and science kid, right? You know, I did really well in those courses, but I felt like that was like who I was defined as. I was like really good at chess as young and went like to like nationals and shit. But like people were like putting
Nice.
me in this like, oh, you don't like art, you're the math and science kid. And I'm like,
Right.
I guess that's who I am. And then like, but I did some art things as a kid and kind of won like a student choice award and like, but it wasn't my thing. And then like I felt
yeah.
after a while, I was like, I got really into hip hop and got really into rapping, and I was like, I think this is my thing. And I think at first it was just rapping, and as I got older, I was like, I want to tell the story. I don't want to use someone else's beat. I want to create my own beat. And then as I got in production, and then as I got older and like got more into the art space, I realized I just love making stuff. I love telling stories. And what I actually ended up realizing in college is that though I do love my own personal self-expression, being able to like make cool sounds and, you know, music and designs and stuff like that, I really love like enabling others to tell their stories, because I feel like, you know, mine's one story to tell and could have some cool impact, but if I was able to enable a new generation of people to more effectively you know, choose creativity as their lifelong pursuit and passion, you know, as their career, like to me that's a life well spent. And I would say, like, to answer your question, I feel like that's sort of like my underlying thesis of sort of everything I do is just like, how can I help people tell stories that are impactful to each other? Because I know how impactful stories were to me, you know, growing up and even still to this day.
So it sounds like your focus is more on creating platforms for people as opposed to creating like some sort of, you know, consumption item or something, you know, some type of entertainment, because that's very powerful. Right? I feel like a lot of times creating platforms is harder than creating a single item to sell, right? Like, you know,
No, for sure.
I could paint something, right, and try to find somebody who likes my painting, but a platform for a painter to go on and auction off his painting to the world, that's powerful, right?
You know, yeah, you know, because I think the thing that gets at like it's sort of those both sides of my personality, the technical sort of puzzle, like, you know,
Hmm.
word rotator versus, or you know, or shape rotator versus
Shape rotator versus
word.
word
So
salad.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I got the word rotator in me too. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that was a
I,
great tweet, by the way. That was a great tweet.
I was joking on the timeline. I was like, rapping is word rotating, because that's how I think when I like freestyle. I like take a word and it's like, okay, cool. Look at it from this side. Look at this
All right,
side.
what's another word? This phone.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
100% get that, dude.
yeah.
No, I love that, man. But yeah, so like I see as like platforms, like this interesting scratch between there's a technical aspect, there's, you know, aggregation and manipulation of data, and then putting it in a presentable, intuitive way for users. And like art is all about like context, right? Anyone who says a piece of art exists on its own, that's just not true, right? Art is the story. We're told about the painting, about the song. Why is this song important? Why is this artist important? And how do you go listen to it? Is it through a piece of vinyl you went into a store and had to save up money to go get, right?
Yeah.
All that things like builds the experience of art. And I think that's same thing with a platform. There's like this whole experience aspect, there's this technical aspect, and this sort of psychological puzzle that like, how do we go bring people to caring about this thing and actually making their lives better? So it scratches a bunch of different itches.
I love that. So you said platforms and that can influence people. That's something that's sort of been a theme throughout the couple episodes that we've had so far is how can the platforms affect things. So for example, when I'm thinking about trying to build products or build ideas, the idea that I want to, or the behavior that I want the platform to evoke is sort of empathy, understanding, coordination, depolarization of extremes, right? Bring people together. When you're building platforms, what are you optimizing for? What do you want to see out of the things that you build?
Users.
Users.
It's all about adoption, bro. Yo, I love that you said that.
No. My question is more so because I want users too. But what do you want your users to want?
Yeah, no. I say that tongue in cheek, but like in a way that like. So I think users and like obviously like it's like writing a song, right? You can try to people I find for the most part like especially earlier on artists when you try to go like oh man I just want to have a big hit I'm gonna go try to write something that's just like poppy and like it's not too abrasive and it's not too like edgy. It's like very rarely does it work out. Like it's the people who are scraping the edge of what's new and what could be done and what's comfortable who really toe that line of familiar to new and different is like that's the stuff that breaks out, right? And so when it comes to like users and what I want them to feel, like I want them to feel something new, right? Like I almost like don't want to have like a word for the emotion, like you know, like I think like the German language is sort of great for that. Like there's a bunch of like they construct a bunch of new complex words for very nuanced, deep sentiment things, and it's like the English language isn't really great for like new feelings. Like we use the word love for like 30 different things, right?
Yeah.
You know.
I feel you.
So that's sort of like I mean I want it to be like this like you know, what do I want users to feel? I think fun is important. Obviously there's ethics when I say I want users. You can't just like go to the bottom ends of the earth of just like all right once you do have all these users like all right what do we do now? Obviously I mean but I do generally think though especially in the Web3 place is that obviously there's been like Cambridge Analytica and data and stuff that has made people especially if you're very tech focused wary of platforms and you have a lot of you know founders I think go in hypersensitive to concerns of users and I think there may be a little over indexing sensitivities and it's like if you can just make people feel something special and new like they would with a new song or a new piece of art or whatever like oh my god your platform is scratching an itch I can't get anywhere else like well hell like I'm gonna come back around and I think it's that sort of same unique newness that familiar like oh like they're not trying to explore the world for the first time. You're using a bunch of weird icons that are put in weird locations, like just to be new. That's not new. That's just like making a really weird 7/4 beat with like screeches on the off beats, and like it's interesting, but it's like you're not going to mass market with that, right? Yeah, exactly. So like, there's stuff that like can be funky, but like, oh, that's like, oh, interesting. They did that way, but I get it. That makes sense. Like, okay, I follow this flow, and so you know that's generally how I think about it. Even though that's very like broad and kind of vague, I hope that leads a little intuition.
That's super cool.
Absolutely, man. No, and it's great to hear that because I feel like I'm the same. I can't ever really pinpoint how I want to do something specifically. You know, if someone's asking like, well, "What's your goal with this?" That everybody kind of feels good, and how do you really like? How do you talk about feeling with words when you don't even know what it is, right? So that's great. I definitely agree with you there. I want to start wrapping this into, Web3. So anybody who's listening to this podcast, anybody who's interested in any of this, is because they want to talk about Web3, the blockchain, and everything. Right now, there have been content creators, there have been entrepreneurs since way before any of this started, right? Since the beginning of time, and so innovation, I think, is at the core of a lot of that. And I think really this is one of those steps where we're starting to see innovation. How has it changed for you, right? So before we even get into conversations about what we think about Web3 versus Web2 and all that, I just want to ask you, Mass, how has your life changed since this was even introduced to the world? So outside of the debate of what it is and what it means to you, how has it affected you?
That's a good question. How's it affected me? I'm not here to claim that I've made a bunch of money off crypto. So if you're looking for a a trick on when to buy and sell,
our L's all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely I've made some money. I've lost some money. Overall probably a little bit in the red, but that's because I just first decided to get into crypto, like in the mass. I've been watching it for a while. Like I first actually found out about crypto like freshman year of college. So that would have
Yep.
been like the fall of 2013.
Mhm.
And so I had there's this new kid who like freshman, he pulls up in a Mustang, right? And I'm like, holy, he's like, his parents like, no, it's my car. I'm like, holy shit, how'd you get a Mustang? He's like, oh, Bitcoin. I'm like, what's Bitcoin? And he's like, it's this internet money that you can go. It's like gone up a bunch recently, and like I sold it, to get pay for some college and get a Mustang. I'm like, that's weird.
Super cool.
Yeah, and I'm just like, all right, like,
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't get this thing, and then I got busy with college and kind of forgot about it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then every once in a while you hear about it, but it was like in the dredges, and then I started following it more and more and more. I almost bought it 1K. I was like, had my finger on the buy button, and then I was like, nah. Pulled out, and oh man, oof, bitter
Yeah.
tears, bitter tears. But I then started actually like purchasing like after the bust in like 2018, I think it was.
Mhm.
And so that I took some pretty hard L's trying
Yeah.
to learn that. It was just really interesting watching sort of the market and the chatter and how it sort of worked, and trying to look at chart analysis and stuff like that. And so I sort of casually followed it. I remember I had some friends in the ICO space in like 2017,
Mhm.
doing some of that stuff. Um, and and then obviously God, I would say this year with NFTs blowing up really sort of like threw my head back in the
Mhm.
focusing on it again. I'd always sort of been keeping in touch, but it wasn't as something that was filling up as much as my feed.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I mean I think that's at least the how has it affected me. It's really been on the there's sort of been a long cycle, and just sort of like I really and this is maybe my first hot take of the evening, but like I think the biggest thing, especially with the modern sort of state of NFTs, I think it's really important to delineate the cultural revolution from the technological aspect of a revolution,
Yeah.
right? They're
Mhm.
two totally different things, right?
Mhm.
Fair.
NFTs and blockchain haven't existed for quite a bit now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, in internet terms, I mean, a couple of years isn't like all that long, but it actually
No.
kind of is,
No,
right?
internet years like 2, 3 years is like a decade or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the idea of what it can mean is what's really starting to capture the heart and minds, and that's what I think we have to do and realize is that like, all right, we've there's still obviously more technological work that needs to be done,
Mhm.
for scaling and stuff. But right now, I think it's definitely in the battle for hearts and minds, and trying to establish a culture of decentralization. It's not like you can still totally do things very successfully within a centralized fashion, right? There's no
Mhm.
one's disputing that system works. But what Web3, in my opinion, is asking is there a better way? Could we do something better? Like we had kings and queens and we had societies. There
Right.
was theoretically some social mobility, even like in the Renaissance and stuff like that. A bunch of the painters grew up poor and then were successful, right? Not as
Yeah.
much as we'd love it, but like we decided democracy because like, hey, it kind of
Mhm.
works, but maybe it could be better. Maybe we could
Mhm.
have a better life for more people if we had more people having a say in how things were happening. And I see Web3 as equivalent, as sort of a
Mhm.
modern day democratic revolution of like, hey, these organizations and structures are cool when they're top down, but like when you look at organizations like Facebook, and these massive TikTok and massive technology companies, they're so opaque. It's so hard to understand their motivations, what they're doing, why they're doing it. And I think our gut reaction as citizens and consumers to be like, yo, there's got to be a system that's more than just shareholders, right? Or even a way
Yeah.
for people to come like have a slightly more influence than just that way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and bring that concept to not just the large corporations and shares, but on a much more organic grassroots
Yeah.
style.
No, that's
Mhm.
fair.
No,
That's
makes
fair.
sense.
I made a point on the first episode to talk about why some of the people who are very anti there's right now it's the anti NFT thing, but just anti new like Web3 crypto anything in that they're very traditionalist, I guess we could call them in that sense. Um and I think it's because what is being challenged, right? You talk about like the infrastructure of technologies that exist right now in society. And I think one of the core things that crypto touches on are banks. And I talked to Knyck about like how old is the idea, like the ideology of a bank, right? Of that
Mm-hmm.
you and I no longer directly talk like with each other and manage our money through gold or through barter or through anything. We decided we had it now decentralization being at the core of a lot of the movement here. The question comes, what how far do we take this decentralization thing? What should be decentralized, what shouldn't? And I think what's easy to happen right now, and I'm glad you separated the technical movement from the like that culture movement, right? Is culturally they're going to be maxis. They're going to be people who come in and they say everything should be decentralized, everybody should. Well, no, because you're going to get scammed really easy because people are
Yeah.
when there's not a centralized financial institution watching your back for you.
Yeah.
As much
That
as
you
a lot of
trust.
people
Yeah. Yeah.
hate governments and hate Big Brother, all that stuff, fair, and they're not perfect. What they're meant to provide you, like that protection, is something that not everybody's going to be okay with letting go of. And that's how you achieve that maxi level decentralization, which just
Mhm.
isn't to me, right? And this is personal here because there's some people who will give you their thesis on why that's possible. I don't believe that's possible.
Mhm. Yeah, it's about accountability, right? Oh, Nick, are you gonna say
No,
something?
no, go ahead, go ahead. I can go.
No, yeah, as I was just gonna say is because, like, I mean, we know the banks, though I think generally like, well, do we totally trust them? How much stuff
Yeah.
is going offshore? Like, but we know that like they're not gonna move money out of my account just randomly. Like, I can check it, and like they
I
could
don't know about the
theoretically do
Canadians.
it.
Right.
The
Or
Canadians are
no,
like not feeling that right now.
let's actually talk just a little bit in the weeds with it. Banks give you the federal accreditation, right? So you can put up to
Mhm.
$200,000, in a bank,
Yeah,
and if that bank messes up like really bad, loses all their money, the U.S. government, because they went through that process, says we got you up to 200K, right?
yeah.
If OpenSea right now, something happened, it's on them to just go and say, "Oh yeah, we'll help you out." Like and what
Mhm.
social cultural push and like that's about guilt. The guilt has to get to them. Like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
that's
mm-hmm.
it.
And this is why I think regulation is the best thing that can happen to Web3 and cryptos, because like we need to bridge the gap between the decentral maxis where there's no such thing as government, essentially like almost like hardcore libertarians, like everything is decentralized and there's like no accountability except personal
Hmm.
accountability, and which is cool. That's the quickest way to get fucked over.
Yeah.
And then someone who sees power vacuums, are ultimately filled, right? So if there's a way to stamp out the vacuum and force the decentralization, and that was decentralization. I think that's one of the great things the U.S. government, first pioneered, was like actually having a first actually decently decentralized system where you had states who had a massive like role that prevented any one entity from like you know possessing, and that scared any one state or any one actor from like having a power grab, and over time that built trust inside the system, and now we'd be like, okay, maybe like rights should be a little bit more equal throughout all the states, but fundamentally the point of is that is decentralization but with a somewhat centralized authority is a way for trust to be built over time,
Yeah.
of showing consistent behavior, and like that took hundreds of years to
Yeah.
sort of build that trust, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we're asking a lot from a new system that is like a couple of years old, right, to
Yeah.
happen. But I think anything that can like bridge, especially when the U.S. government can get involved and start to regulate and make some of these guarantees, like they did with banks and stuff like that, and then it starts to be like, okay, I can start to trust this now because I know if I get scammed, someone's actually gonna like shit's gonna happen to the people who scammed me. But
Right.
because right now it's open season, you can just do it, pull the rug, disappear, delete the Twitter account, and
Yeah.
Yeah. Be
you're
gone.
with the bag.
Yeah.
I've only heard a few things where people even get any repercussions for it. Nick, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, I was going to ask. So we're talking about decentralization versus centralization in the context of safety, but I wanted to ask you, especially related to the tech from before. You were talking about token gated NFTs within games, right? And having those things on cars or clothing. And I think I've seen a lot of posts on Twitter around people who work in the gaming industry saying like, "Oh, this is never going to work. We can't have NFTs that go from game to game because that's not how games work. There's different types of graphics. There's different types of things. I don't believe that because inherently in me it feels like we just figure everything out. Like you said before, we figure out banks, we figure out other things. But how do you think about coordination?
Interoperability.
Yeah, interoperability. Yeah, and coordination in the context of specifically graphics within gaming and sharing those NFTs.
So here's a great example that disproves that, right? Though it also it leads to okay, well, there's still a little nuance in there. I'll get to it in a second, and then have a sort of solution on top. But look at emojis, right? They are a Unicode thing, right? That is like, it's the same code. It is this emoji, no matter it is, but it looks one way if it's on Google, another way on an iPhone. If you're in a Word doc, it looks this way. Different platforms, they all have their own manifestation and rendering of this unique thing. The difference is that the emojis are a centralized, who are the valid emojis that we will all recognize. That is coming from one, body
Central
versus
energy.
that okay, we're only gonna work, have our design team do an aesthetics matching for these new emojis that came out. We're not gonna we can't, because the thing that Web3 promises that and it's sort of the modern iteration of YouTube and the creator economy is that like anyone could go create something. Imagine anyone could go create an emoji. No, how do you make sure it's rendered the same on all platforms so it fits with the aesthetic and doesn't feel totally out of place? I mean, you could just do with Discord and some of the platforms like, all right, we don't. It just sticks in there. If it looks good, it looks good. If it doesn't, whatever. Not my design fault. But so one of the things I think is focusing on places and games and content and saying, okay, yes, if we just let it totally brawl out, get it all broad, some stuff won't work. But let it open and let people experiment and try to find stuff that does work. So, if you're one of the reasons why I liked GTA is it's a hyper realistic looking game, especially when you put the hyper realistic mods on. So any game that is realistic looking, it's pretty like you can have more leeway, right? Because you could put cartoon looking stuff inside realistic because then it looks like a cartoon. But you could also put realistic stuff inside realistic because then it just feels realistic.
I like that.
So like starting in games and spaces like that has more breadth to it. Two is having a machine learning aesthetics matching. So you're familiar with like a lot of the there's turn this image to make it look like it was painted by Van Gogh. Like you could essentially machine learning neural nets that were mapped trained off hundreds of Van Gogh paintings. So then you put an image and it takes that stylization and does a stylization mapping. So I think that to me is actually a pretty straightforward way of like, here's your art, but then it's run through this engine and then it's stylized onto the aesthetics of this game. So it would look good in Fortnite or Roblox, etc. And it would still be the same entity, though it would be maybe looking slightly different. But in the same way, emojis are sort of the same thing.
I've got a little bit of a shameless plug here and disclaimer because of so I own this NFT I'm about to talk about. I'm not.
It's showtime. It's showtime.
Yeah,
showtime.
Like by all means, bro. Like I'm not. Don't listen to me if this.
But
goes
it is
up,
listed on OpenSea right here if you want.
but right here. Yeah. Anyway. It's an NFT game and actually it touches. It's called Crypto Raiders and it touches on this question right here a little bit. They had a partnership with another NFT called Loots, right? And the Loots NFT it's essentially trying to solve this question right now for the NFT games, right? How do you introduce interpolation between NFT games with Loot? And they're essentially trying to come up with partnerships with all these NFT games, and they're saying, hey, rather than like design and have to make up all the attributes of your skins, your cosmetic stuff, because for a game you want the attributes like armor, health, defense, attack, whatever, right? Like those are important to the game mechanics. But when we talk about Fortnite skins, when we talk about things like that, the obvious ones that people call out, how do you solve that? Well, I'm not saying it's the end all be all answer, but there are projects out there aiming to solve that. So the first one that came out to my mind is Loots. I don't own Loots, but they have a partnership with Crypto Raiders, which I do own. Knowing that Crypto Raiders is eventually going to integrate it, I started looking at Loots, right? A second one that I wanted to mention before I'll let you guys speak on it was Fractal, the Twitch founder who made his NFT marketplace. So it's a marketplace called Fractal, but also the Fractal NFTs look like drops. They look like power-ups, right? And I don't recall following up on the research, but there was a lot of hype behind saying, well, hey, if you could, if these fractals end up being used as NFT drops on, this marketplace the same way you had drops on Twitch, right? Like you could go on Twitch, watch a streamer. If you watch them for an hour, you would get a skin on World of Warcraft, on Fortnite, like on Call of Duty. Like that was already happening, right? On this guy's other website, Twitch. So I think it'd be pretty easy, not easy, I mean, but like to think that like he's gonna try to do it here. So the solutions are being built, and interesting here, right? The decentralization in this place isn't really happening all the way at the user level. It's kind of just happening at like the okay, we're gonna allow these NFT projects to come in, and rather than crypto raiders, Fortnite, Call of Duty, whatever, eventually owning these skins, maybe they have to hit up Loots and say, "Hey, Loots, you guys have 500 million people who like trade your skins, right? Like let's get on it." And maybe Loots provides that platform for a graphic designer to come on and design a skin that you can wear also on GTA and on Dragon Ball Z, and you could go on. But that's kind of what I've seen in this in right now going on in the space with NFT gaming and loot. It's interesting because it's so up in the air, like a lot of these things, right? But
Hmm.
hearing your possible solution is interesting because that's even, I think, a level deeper, right?
Hmm.
In terms of trying to take it away from, like, in my scenario, there's still a decentralized platform, right? Like kind of giving that, and they're gonna control it. In your solution, it kind of does get to the core and maybe gives more power to the people. One of the things I do want to talk about, and I noticed in your tweet thread about Web 2 versus Web 3, um, I wanted to point this out. Not Call of Duty, Counter Strike, the Counter Strike marketplace. Are either of you familiar with it? I don't know how into gaming you guys were.
I'm pretty into gaming, but I don't play Counter Strike. But I know vaguely, and
So
it's the same as what's the other game that's so I'm totally drawing a blank on Counter Strike. It's like the same, but with it's like
it's a
Overwatch meets
shooter
Counter
game.
Strike.
It's a shooter game. It's an FPS
Yeah,
game. Yeah.
no, but what's the other game that's very similar to Counter Strike? I'm totally drawing a blank.
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking
Uh,
about.
it's
Oh,
like
Valorant. Yeah,
Valorant. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like the
yeah. Valorant.
Valorant store.
Yeah, Valorant's like an offshoot of Counter Strike with like
Yeah,
superpowers and stuff.
yeah.
But the idea is the marketplace that Counter Strike introduced, and this is all Web 2, right? Like everyone
Mhm.
talks about how like Web 3 is gonna introduce like the ownership of shit. Bro, in Web 2, I was on gambling websites rolling for Counter Strike skins that were selling for like 25, $50. Now it's not Bored Ape Yacht Club millions of dollars, CryptoPunk millions of dollars. But like this technology, like you said, isn't all entirely like new. You know what I'm talking about? It's been
Yeah.
existing, and
People
in
did
Counter,
that with
yeah,
what's that game? I'm drawing a blank on stuff right now. It was the not World of Warcraft. It's where you could smelt metal and hunt around. It was like
or
the
RuneScape,
OG RuneScape. Duh. Yeah,
yeah.
RuneScape. Yeah, people did the same thing on RuneScape.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and the interpolation part of it is the thing, right? How do you take the value that you accrued in RuneScape and transfer it into, now you're going to start playing World of Warcraft? Now, whether that's transferring over that digital asset, whether that's liquidating somehow your RuneScape assets, and then hopping over to World of Warcraft as a gamer, I think that is the biggest thing for me. And I'll open up the floor to you guys right now. To as a gamer, my whole life, I've played games 2 3 years, and then after that put it down. I have no value from those 2 3 years, right? That game becomes obsolete, it goes. The idea now that you'll be able to somehow transfer value out of those games is neat. But one of the things to me that I've always thought of was, hey, if I'm trying to transfer the value out of this game, unless I can time the market and know that my assets are at an all-time high right now, or at least at a peak somehow, right?
Hmm.
Am I really just? Is this gonna feel like GameStop in Web 3, where I'm gonna get like pennies on the dollar for like, what you would call, you walk into GameStop with like 10 games, and it'd be like, yo, here's $2, kid. Like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? Like,
So I think so. I honestly I do think there's going to be certain stuff that's going to be valuable, but I think one of the the true value is going to be personal value. Obviously, there's going to be money to be made, stuff like that. But I think there is a decent amount of, and I really like it for supporting artists and giving people like the art, in the same way Patreon really allowed, people to support a new class of artists and creators by actually directly giving to them and stuff like that in a very simple way. I see, Web3, NFTs and tokens beyond as a way to incentivize, giving money over to artists. But specifically in the game space, when I think like, let's say I played Battlefield 2 for, a couple of years and I accrued a bunch of these skins and stuff like that. Like, I'm not going to play Battlefield 2 anymore, but it'd be really cool when I played other games, if I ran across other people who played Battlefield 2, that they could easily quickly identify, like, oh my gosh, you're like a Battlefield 2 OG, because they could see a patch on my shoulder or a skin or a voice line from the game that I could import that show that I had earned it and stuff like that. Could I sell that stuff? Yeah, potentially, but like, I'm not going to go buy, something from some other game that I didn't play, because that's not the culture and community I want to project. Now, maybe, there's something to be said of me buying a level 5, even though I only made it to level 3, skin, and I want to, look a little more hardcore to OG. That's not my style, but I know some people would.
Or also, people might start to take NFTs out of the context of the game, even if they don't know it, if they become larger status symbols. Name 3 Led Zeppelin songs. Like, I don't know, I never listened to them, but this shirt is cool as hell. People might see some stuff like that. But that's an interesting point, that people might not be interested in, all of that content. That's super cool.
Yeah, I think what's happening now, right, is you're seeing at least in the NFT space, you're seeing play to earn games starting to become popular, right? And there's a lot of hype behind play to earn games, and I guess I don't know that we defined it last episode if we touched on it, but this episode, the idea of play to earn games is before you used to pay to play, like you would buy the physical game, right? And then they introduced free to play models of video games online, and usually they came in with in-game marketplace transactions, skins and stuff. That's how those game studios would make their money. And now the idea is that this will now evolve into play to earn, where you playing your game allows you to passively earn some sort of income, some sort of value. What's troublesome right now is the scamming, right? The market's so volatile right now. Like, it's all Ponzi schemes. It really just feels like a Ponzi scheme, and then we put Farmville on top of it to make you feel comfortable, like, getting in. Yeah. It really does. It really is, right? And what's really funny is if you go into these Discords and like you find communities who are honest about it, they'll tell you, this is my favorite Ponzi I've ever found. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like they're very honest about, like, yes, this is Ponzi economics. This is all a Ponzi scheme. Sure, would eventually bust. Yeah, but I just made $5,000. I don't know what to tell you, kid. You know what I'm talking about? So, like, that's really the type of people you'll find. And what I hope, and what I have seen a few studios do this, is that they remember that at the core, you're building a game and earning becomes passively, right? So, like, the game experience is first, and some of these play to earn blockchain mechanics that are being introduced to gaming comes secondarily. And I think that is the key to, if anybody out there is looking for a game that's going to boom, if you want to do the thing, look for those games that are worried about the actual game. Like, at the end of the day, it has to be fun. I have to want to play it for 5 hours just because I like it, not because I want to make $20. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah. I mean, because I think it comes down to sort of unit economics, like a lot of player. Like, I think we're not going to see a material change in terms of the amount of money that can be made from playing video games. Like, you're going to be doing it. One is, like, just in the same way you did RuneScape, you're going to be getting, exclusive items that look cool, that represent status and stuff. The thing that we're doing is we're just defrictionalizing the ability to make the exchange happen. Instead of having to, like, sell passwords and, make it hard to transfer the account, stuff like that, we're removing friction from that. So theoretically, you could maybe see a 50% increase in the amount of value being transferred, just because of the people that, like, should I sell it? Nah, that's too much hassle. I'm not gonna about doing it. Now, making it so easy, there's going to be new people who are, ability to sell it, going to down to do it. But I think looking back at the fundamental, you have to look at, value, like the money. It's like, my background's in physics and engineering, and so, like, one of the things I always do, like, first, like, what is the energy coming into the equation and what's the energy coming out? Those have to equal each other. We can't have a net generation of energy unless you have a battery in it. But in this case of money, there's not going to be a net in a game. There's people going to put money into it, and people are going to make money. Are going to make money off of that, the money being put in. They're going to make some percentage of it. Theoretically, most of the money should go back to the creators of the game because it was an investment to go build out a great game. In the same way, a startup or a piece of art, you spend a bunch of time and effort to go make something, and you hopefully have a nice long tail of making money off this project, right?
Mhm.
But so what does that mean for the economy created? Well, there's money that can be made off of it. So in terms of the scale, cool, buying cool Apex Legends skins, and if we could take them from one game to the next or whatever, that's super cool. But it's not to be frank, I don't see the pay to earn being this new massive boom to bust, right? It only works for these, more impoverished countries because of the exchange rate, right?
Yeah.
That you have a bunch of people dumping in a bunch of money into this, these games, hoping they could do it, but then they don't have the same time to dedicate that these people who do it full time, can. But the only reason they can do it full time is because something that was worth, maybe a hamburger to someone here, in the US is worth, a week's pay to them in a different country, right? So,
but that literally, I went through that. I found a game. I ended up making like $10 a day. Like literally $10 a day, guys,
Yeah.
off of maybe 20 clicks. Like literally 20 clicks, and I was making $20, like $10 a day. Now, to me, hold on, Nick, I want to finish this.
Go.
To me, I remember saying, "Is this really worth it? Like, I gotta log in, I gotta set an alarm, like whatever, right?" But then I started thinking about that. I looked at the demographics of people. Most of these people are playing from Brazil, Venezuela, Philippines, the South Pacific Asian islands, like all those more impoverished countries, or not even that they're generally impoverished, but just that exchange rate is so strong. You know what I'm talking about? That exchange rate is so strong. And that brings up the whole idea of this being a solution for poverty and like a lot of these social things, right? Maybe the play to earn model won't work for the first world, right? Maybe it'll just be like a passive thing. But one of the themes that I've seen is how can we sustain this model that, yeah, maybe for me or in the New York area, $10 a day doesn't really matter. Like, I mean, I hate to say it doesn't matter because that's literally a lunch for, that's somebody's work to pay, but work effort wise, right? Return on investment, I'm not going to do it. How do we sustain that system to exist for those countries? How do we, so you and I, we might not care about that, right? We're not going to do it, but should we care about keeping that up so that that person in Venezuela can feed his family that month? Like I know ethically, everyone's gonna say yes, we should, right? Like let's get that out the way real quick. Yeah, the answer is we're all good. We want to help everybody, but realistically, it takes effort to keep that system in place. It takes money that's coming out of somebody's pocket to give to them.
yeah, it's
And
a zero-sum game, right?
yeah,
For every 90% of the money is going to be made by 10% of the users, right? There still has to be more money going in than going
exactly.
out. So that means
Yeah.
everyone else that's fine. If it's sort of like Spotify, right? Like we all pay our $10 a month subscription, and if you're also an artist, you pay your $10 a month. But also, you could potentially be making way back more, but you're probably not making that much money unless you're doing really well. But it's 90% of the money is made from 2% of the artists on Spotify. But that's just the way economics works, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, we're gonna say something, Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna sort of say I don't know if this is the same thing, but I feel like its cost of living also is different in these places. Like we're meeting like backpackers and stuff down here that are living on like 500 pesos a day, and I think like you said, Mass, that like there has to be the sides of the equation have to equal something, but it feels like there's a lot of excess here and a lot of need and like talent and people willing to be participants in these systems
Right.
there. And so I think what it is like making it so that the people that are here that have that excess are getting enough joy out of playing these things, and then making it so that the financials work on the other side.
If they can put the money into it to fund the financials, the other side, then
and we know we have it because we spend it all on extra price Starbucks, right? So if we can make something that's worth more to us than that differential on what's on Starbucks' margin, saying that we can give it to somebody who's willing to do something else. It's sort of my idea.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is this sounds like a tax, though, doesn't it, guys? Like,
It's tax. Well, I mean, it's tax season, but like, why not?
I want to hear you on that. Doesn't that sound like it's introducing a tax?
But I would. Go, Massey. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to be paying for something, and that's right. I go back to Patreon, but you're not just giving the money for the most part to the creators, though some have it set up. But like you're getting something back in return, and it's maybe just emotional, maybe it's a membership to a community. You get to see you get to have deeper interactions with this personality you really love, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, like so, I played Fortnite for a pretty decent bit in its heyday. And then stopped playing it because I realized like, you have to be so sweaty to be good at Fortnite. It's like it takes so much practice. Dude, I felt like I was in soccer practice trying to like crank out 90s and shit like that. I'm like, bro, this is now work. Dude, this is now work. I'm like, this is no fun.
Yeah.
And so I switched to Apex Legends, but I've never spent money in Apex Legends, but I had spent probably nearly $100 on Fortnite skins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's a huge lesson to learn for play to earn creators and game creators in general is like, how do you create memes that make people want to spend money? Because like when new dances came out with really cool songs in them and like really silly, funny skins, like everyone in the squad's got it. Like, damn, I want that skin too. And they had such a good way of creating a culture and fun. It was like, I'm paying $10, but this is going to get me at least like 10 laughs. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Really, and what's it worth to you?
Community laughs. And so and I think that's what Apex Legends didn't really do. They took themselves so seriously that like all the skins were badass and cool looking, but like I'm here to laugh. Like I'm not fucking sweaty. Like I'm not sweaty. I love Fortnite for that reason. Like come on, play to your audience here. Like most of the people are gonna be buying these skins are consumers and they want to have fun. And so I think they have gotten more fun over time, and I think they've started to realize, and like as it more turned out. But like when it comes to play to earn games, you got to give real like most consumers have to put in money into the game and totally be fine of never seeing it back, right? And it's like I'm putting it for the content because I enjoy it and I want to.
Yeah, because really Ponzi is only a Ponzi if somebody ends up with the money that you don't like or you think that they're doing with it that's something that they shouldn't be doing, right?
You expected getting money back, right? Like you need money, like but if you're putting it, then it's a business. I'm putting in money.
And also, if it's going to if it's going to somebody with a yacht, you're like, no. But if it's going to like feed a village, you're like, dude, I was not gonna do. I got so much out of this, right? This skin, this dance, this whatever it was, and so did they. You know what I'm saying? And the asymmetry, I think, in needs and asymmetry and lifestyles and thing. And maybe we're gonna listen to this in like a year or so and be like, the ethical balance on that was wild, but does it feel like it?
I put in a bunch of money to, Jeff Bezos' yacht with my AWS fees. So I don't know. So like
Well, let's do that.
But goddamn it, he makes a good product. I'll give it to him on that.
Let's talk about that because there are some charity NFT projects that were released. I remember seeing something about like beluga whales or something like that. It was called like belugies. It got some hype. Yeah, literally. And it was this like cute family that had like actually like started up an NFT project, took a video of them signing like the charity check and everything. Like honestly, as a proof of concept, I was super excited to see that because I thought, yes, finally, like this is gonna be one of those things that hits the news and it won't be 10-year-old kid becomes multimillionaire off like JPEG, you know what I'm talking about? It'll be like, oh, this is great, like this utility here that's working. Not that it's dead, but it's not a hyped up project. Like it's not like it's booming, right? So why is that? It's because people aren't invested in it the same way they're invested in like this potential JPEG having a hype, like
Side note, like why does no one do PNGs? I personally fuck with lossless shit, so like I feel like we're missing a mark. Like bro, that's the next big project. It's like fuck JPEGs, baby. I'm a PNG boy.
Oh my god, for real though.
Imagine listening to MP3s. I'm only on dot waves, bitch.
Oh my god, the JPEG maxis are gonna get you, bro.
Oh no,
I'm looking at my window for red dots right now.
That's fucking wild. Joe, do you want to get into the?
Sorry for derailing stuff. I couldn't help.
No. Let's go. Keep it up. We wanted to talk about the Bored Ape Yacht Club guys.
Oh
possibly
my god.
doxed. Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Mace, so I don't know if you heard about the Bored Ape Yacht Club founders that got doxxed by BuzzFeed.
Oof.
So
I know
yeah,
I didn't hear about that. Like,
so
how badly doxed?
no, like they had to come out on Twitter and just basically introduce themselves, like real world pictures, like here's my license type of thing. They owned up to it. They had to, and I'll explain why real quick. Um, this is actually the whole thing is what is doxing, because some of our audience might not even know the terminology, right? So in this new culture, being anonymous is a very popular and somewhat common thing to do. The
Hmm.
anonymity factor, some people will say just because it allows them to play a character in a new world that they want to portray. Cool. Other people do it for safety and security. There's a lot of money being made here. There's a lot of weird people in the world, and if they know that you hold a $500,000 asset or are the owner of something like that, some people just want to be anonymous. So that being said, BuzzFeed, which everybody knows, had like a little column investigation that they did right into the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Apparently, the Bored Ape Yacht Club organization has been ramping up their plans to really, do more on the business side. So they've had to claim titles and LLCs and state put it like real world addresses and kind of actually start doing that public record stuff, right? That BuzzFeed got a hold of, found their public information, put out an article with their legal names and all that. The Bored Ape Yacht Club founders came in and said, "All right, well, I'll own up to it. Yeah, it's me." Right. So they took something that could have been bad and they kind of ran with it and they went. The question here, right? So a lot of people that might not mean much to a lot of people that could just be like, oh, okay, some people who were anonymous are now no longer anonymous on the internet. But from maybe some of the people who are participants of the space and why it matters to those who aren't is there's a question as to anonymity in the space by project leads, by people launching these projects, is good or bad for the space, because of potential scams or not, and if this could help somewhat with the volatility, because right now everyone knows that it's such a volatile market, but the idea is if we make it so if me and Nick wanted to launch an NFT, we would have to provide our legal ID, documents to show to prove that we have an actual
Regulation,
business. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
regulation, all
custom.
that, right?
Yeah, the government
But
can't back your shit up if they can't actually get at the people who could
yeah,
potentially screw you over,
and this is one of those
accidentally or
cases.
otherwise.
Yeah, and this is one of those cases where a third party, completely separate organization took it upon themselves to release the public information of a multi-billion-dollar like movement. I'll call it. 'Cause they are not. I guess now they're officially an organization because they got their LLC. But before that, they were literally a community of NFT holders. Right. It's hard to really put a title on some of these things now with
Yeah.
everything being so new. But um, multi-billion-dollars. Yeah, I want to know who's in charge of that multi-billion-dollar project I'm about to put in, thousands of dollars into, right? It makes sense logically. Somebody's going to ask for that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'll open the floor. Nick, what do you think? Good or bad doxing project leads in this space? And if you say good, if you think yes, this is good for it, right? Who? I want you to think of who is going to actually be that regulation in this
Oh
specific
yeah.
case.
I think doxing is inherently like just kind of like violent, it's like sort of like
It's a
pulling
dirty
someone.
word.
Yeah, it's like pulling somebody out into like the light. It just
Mm.
feels gross. Also, some of the best. Messi, you're gonna say something.
I was just gonna say is maybe we should have, because when I think of the word doxing, at least I think historically it was used. You like reveal documents of like their location,
Oh
their
yeah.
home address,
Well,
and
Yeah.
stuff
this
like
is
that. And
exactly what
like,
that was, Mass. This was like
but did they give their home address?
here's
Well,
the
I think
business
right
like
now,
the
yeah.
legal public documents. Here's my whole
So,
legal.
so, so I think there's a difference. So I think currently, okay. So regardless of what's going on with the Board Ape Yacht Club,
Yeah.
I think doxing has turned from exposing someone's address actively to just saying what their name is.
Their
But I think
identity.
in their
Yeah.
identity, right? I think in the context currently, if you have someone's identity, it's fairly easy to get their address.
Yeah. I would say
And
that.
so I think that's
Yeah.
why they've sort of merged. Like, if somebody, well, I mean, maybe not just your name, but if somebody has your like email address or your number or something, you're pretty much
I
gonzo.
would agree. It used to be super aggressive. It used to be one of those things where if you
Yeah.
got doxxed, it was like it was intentional. It was like somebody targeted you. They did it on purpose. They were trying to
Yeah.
do something of malice
Get
to
you
you by
harassed. Yeah.
doxing.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Now it's
So
just used as exposing somebody's identity. So
yeah, yeah. So in
Yeah.
the so Joe, which one do you sort of mean? I think it's, in this example, it's just when you go from anonymous
it's
to
just in this
non-anonymous
case,
involuntarily, right?
yeah, in this case, yeah.
Yeah. I think honestly, some of the best content creators I know right now on Twitter are anonymous. I would hate to lose them. I think it's a way for people who aren't aren't are afraid to be themselves to be themselves and to create and to do certain things. I think there's obviously negatives to it, right? Like when you like whenever people make an anonymous like social media site, automatically goes to shit. People automatically start bullying because people can't control themselves. But I think um, it very much in my head is like a catch them if you can. You know what I'm saying? If you're good enough to not get doxxed, then you shouldn't get doxxed. And if you're bad enough to get caught, then like it was gonna happen eventually. You know what I'm saying? If you're like the people who like leave no traces are probably good enough that they deserve to stay that way, and the people who do leave traces, then it's like it was bound to happen. You know what I'm saying? It's a Occam's razor kind of thing. So how do you feel about it, Maz?
So I'm gonna. Obviously I hear both sides. So I'm gonna walk out sort of my philosophy when it comes to sort of anonymity versus sort of like being forced to like being public and presented. So I think first, like, why is anonymity cool and why is it useful as a business strategy? One is like anonymous people fucking love mysteries. Fucking Nancy Drew. Everyone fucking wants to know who's behind the goddamn mask. The Masked Singer, right? It's like if you
Yeah.
had a show just called The Singer, I mean, it's been done. It's not new, right? But the Masked Singer, like, oh my god, it's an extra level of intrigue. So when you have artists and stuff and people who release it, it's a way to generate more buzz and more intrigue and stuff like that around a project. So it's a marketing tactic. One, it's also used to protect personal things, but like at the end of the day, there's plenty of publicly well-known, super wealthy people. And so I don't really buy the argument that like, oh, but now they're gonna know I have money and could get me. Like that doesn't really happen. Like it's extremely rare, and people only do it if you have given them an incredibly big reason for them to be pissed at you. And it's like it's still incredibly better chance of you getting hit by a car on the way to go to work or whatever. If you're not working from home. Anyway, there's way other ways to get hurt, shit to happen than you from something happening getting doxxed. So like one is like honestly, and this is a little bit more of the not cynical, but sort of like not paranoid, but like I really think a lot of the narrative around anonymity is propaganda by people who are very wealthy and very powerful, and knowing that if their identity gets out, people can start to hold them accountable for stuff they do in the shadows, right? When you shine light on them, it's harder for them to operate in the background. And so you can create narratives around, it allows people to protect themselves and people be their true colors and like feel like not insecure and stuff. And like, that's cool and all. And like, there's spaces and stuff, but like, it's very well documented that if you're anonymous, it is way easier to be racist, be shitty, be mean to people because you're wearing a mask, right? So because you can't be held accountable, right? You can whip up another account and shit like that. And so, I mean, that's what you get on 4chan, right? That was the whole thing. It's radicals, free speech, radical, and like anonymity, but it is just resulted. We had this experiment. What does that result in? It results in something incredibly toxic. Though you have decent people, you have normal people on 4chan, it creates an atmosphere of you just like trying to find the edge because there's no edge because you can't be held accountable, right? So people are just going to keep saying crazy and craziest things. And unfortunately, we don't have an education system in the country, let alone around the world, that helps people understand and parse reality and work backwards and understand truth from fiction as well as we hope maybe people would. And so when you're anonymous, you can start to create these realities, and if it doesn't work, you can try again because you're anonymous and you're not going to get held accountable. So I tend to be on the side of that. If it's an art project and he's like, listen to my Spotify, listen to this song, like that's cool, like you can be anonymous. But if you're like creating a big and I think we should have laws that at a certain when your assets and your things that you're pushing reach a certain value cap or usership, you have a different set of rules that apply for you. You have to be held more accountable because just the scale of the people you can affect is just greater. And so I'm fine for you're starting out, you're someone small on the internet, like you have a little bit right to be more anonymous. But once you get to a certain size and you can really pull strings of power, you should have to be able to like, all right, I've been endowed with this power through whatever which way, we should maybe have some people check in on you, make sure you actually got that power fair and square, and you're using it for mostly altruistic means.
Mm-hmm.
Makes
That's
sense.
fair.
Makes sense. I like
Yeah.
that.
Dope, dope. Yeah, man. I mean, anonymity in the space there's so much of that human aspect to a lot of these, like that social aspect that's being introduced now in a whole new space. With like the metaverse, we haven't spoken much about the metaverse, but the metaverse I think is going to be a form of expression in the digital form and like period. Right, like for the human, for us, for the people of society, I think the biggest thing that it'll be is provide another form of expression, right? In this case, in digital metaverse form, and anonymity allows for that, right? That form of expression behind like a gaze and all that. Where it's almost like a shield. What will happen? Who knows? Those Bored Ape Yacht Clubbers, they took that took that event and ran with it. They took when life gives you lemons, right? Make lemonade is
Mhm.
what they went with here.
Mhm.
So, man, this has been a great conversation. We're about to hit like 1 hour mark, and I feel like we could go on for like way longer. But
For sure, for sure.
I think we're gonna hit on our one of our favorite spots here, the WTF, the who to follow section. So, Mass, every week we try to provide our audience with one account, person, project, community, whatever you want it to be. Shameless plug, Lincoln, whatever you want. Really, who to follow, who you should follow. So I'll let you get yours in first if you have one. If not, we could go.
So I'll shameless plug myself. Just because why not, right? No
Hmm.
shame here. No dignity and no respect.
Mhm.
So I'm just at Memetic Theory, MEMETIC_theory, THEORY on all platforms. So follow me there. Um, I just mostly I part shit post, part serious stuff. So I just whatever I'm feeling at the moment. But in terms of projects in the general Web3
Whatever you
space.
want.
So there's this cool metaverse studio called Meta X Studios. The founder is at NFT Vibes on Twitter. He's a cool guy. Hollywood. The team is like classic Hollywood people trying to take the studio production skills and bring it to the metaverse. So they're real. They have a bunch of cool projects coming out soon. They've teased some pretty big ones coming up. So one dropping in less than 2 months. It should be pretty freaking big. Have some real big names on it, and it's just funny. It's like a really funny. It's like for the memes, for the lulz. Like back to that Fortnite example that
Yeah.
the about is like it's access to a much larger thing. They have like 7 projects currently in the works, like in various stages of development. So they already have 2 that's going to drop pretty quickly, and then more going on. So it's for sure not a rug pull. So NFT Vibes and MetaX Studios for sure should check them out.
Hmm.
In general, I always just recommend like expand your bubble. Follow people you don't agree with. Follow people who challenge the norm and listen to their arguments. Follow people outside the space. Follow people inside the space, and really try to come to your own conclusions. I have my perspective, but I'm sure it's not right. It's just one perspective.
Love to
Nice.
hear that.
Awesome.
That's a great mindset to keep, man. I tend to agree and try to keep the same ideology for myself. Nick, who's your who to follow?
Yeah, my who to follow for the week is Degenerates. That's Shegenerats. She's building Dance Floor DeFi, a floor price liquidity protocol. Oh my God, can't talk. And she's big Solidity developer, the DAO Queen. She gets everything right pretty much on anything that has to do with like prices and when you should be buying, when you should be selling. Everybody should be following her. And yeah, that's my WTF of the week.
Nice, nice,
Yeah.
love it. Cool.
And you,
So
Drew?
my WTF for the week is uh somebody called Pio on Twitter. Pio.eth. His at Pio Vincenzo underscore. That's at PIOVINCENZO underscore. And the reason why I'm highlighting Pio today is because in the last week, this man has finally quit his job and
No
gone
way.
full time in NFTs and in the space. And I think right now would be a great time to follow his Twitter. That's at Pio Vincenzo underscore. He is one of the leads in a project called the Nifty Portal.
Mm.
Um, and really just he shares his experience. So anybody who just wants to see somebody who, has been in the space for a little bit, has some money, he's not shy about letting you know how much he's earned, but he also does live tradings with this group where they'll like live trade a 10 ETH wallet, a 1 ETH wallet, like trades like that, and kind of talk to it. If you want to get into that, but if you just kind of want to see what it's like for somebody, what it took somebody to quit their job and kind of go full time in this space, he picked NFTs, but it could have been anything else. It could have been DeFi. It could have been just crypto coins. It could have been other things, right? He's taught me so much, and a lot of it, Mass, was the cool thing was I didn't agree with him a lot of times. I would hear some stuff. A lot of times I would hear some stuff, and I initially would be like, I don't know, but I kept going back because it was a great refresher. When I knew when a lot of people were saying one thing and he was saying something else, I always asked myself, well, why? And I love, you need to have people in your followers and on your timeline who are also challenging your thoughts, not just, not just affirming what you believe already, or else you're always just going to have yes men all over your timeline. Right. So that's just a cool follow for me because it's been cool to see his experience. I'm happy for him to have gotten there. I don't know him personally. I'm talking like he's my boy. But I just love seeing success. I love seeing success stories. I love seeing people who made it. And honestly, if I could emulate just a little bit of what that man did, I think I'd be just that much more successful, right? In the space. And he shares all the knowledge he learns every day. So, great follow there.
Nice, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we got She Generates, we got Pio Vincenzo, NFT Vibes. Honestly, great episode so far. Thanks so much for hopping on with us. Really
Thanks for
appreciate
having me.
everything you had to say.
Miss.
Yeah, and honestly, another episode of the Kickblocks Pod down the drain. So I'll be back next week. Everybody listen in, check us out, and see us on all platforms. Catch you guys soon.
Thanks for tuning in.
See y'all later.
Okay, bye.